Okay, hello and welcome back to Human Resource Management, the online session for ABS. Today we are going to be discussing interviewing candidates. It's the next phase after recruitment and selection when you filter out everyone and find the most suitable candidates that you think should go through a more rigorous process of selection. I've divided the video into 5 parts, and please watch all the 5 parts. After watching each part, it will be useful for you to notify me if you've watched it, so I can mark your attendance. And on top of that, they might be an assignment. If not, I will put an assignment after one more session of recording, so you can watch all of it together if you wish to, and then attempt the major assignment. Very shortly, I'll be putting up the assignment by maximum next week. So by that time, you'll have more videos to watch. I want to also recover most of the lost time due to my issues. But anyways, let us proceed forward. Next slide. So today in this part one of this session, we will be doing different types of selection interviews. And they're to know that could be part of I would say, some sort of assignment that you would come your way. All right. So the reason we use an interview is more of an oral questioning to get oral responses, and it's in real time. And because it's in real time, it could be somewhat of a better assessment for a future candidacy. And we just want to have a more sort of intimate relationship, or I would say intimate encounter with our candidate if we are the employer. But for you guys, this could be interesting to get into the head of the employer. And I will give you some tips as I go along on how to interview questions or how to respond to such questions, how to dress appropriately, and so on and so forth. Anyways, let us proceed forward to the next slide. So the basic types of interviews, there are 4 things to be talking about. Number one is the structure of the interview. Is it structured or unstructured? The type of content, which are the types of questions to be asked, and maybe even when we say content, it could also mean in what way was their interview administered. Okay, that's the third part, administration. Let me just explain that a little better. For example, we can classify, when we say, yeah, sorry, it can be one-on-one administration. It can be a panel or mass interview with different people coming together, different candidates coming to one panel interview. It can be online, web interview. It can be a telephone interview, on location, on site. It all depends on how it's administered. Okay. And lastly, we'll talk also about every interview's advantage and disadvantage. This I will speak from also my experiences. It could be valid for you as well. Moving ahead. So when it comes to asking an interview, I would say an interviewee certain questions, sometimes most managers follow an unstructured method because you might have gone through a preliminary testing phase, or already, I would say, the lower hiring manager might have already interviewed you in a more structured way. Structured interviews are certain questions that might be repetitive in a way because, let's say, you're filling out a candidacy form, and they might ask you things like, what are your previous job experiences? What is your college degree like? Or I would say, the most highest degree you received? Do you have a working visa? Do you have, let's say, what are your 3 strengths and weaknesses? So that sort of could be part of a structured interview. It could be part of repetition. Sometimes what some hiring managers do is they have the HR person interview first, and they write down all these answers in a structured manner. So it's possible to have the list of questions prior to the interview. But structured interviews are generally the best. In all interviews are generally ask all the applicants the same question, partly because of this. These interviews tend to be more consistent, reliable, and valid, and have a standardized list. You can also Google top 100 questions asked by interviewers. It could be very useful for you. I generally think, brushing up on such interview questions could be really helpful, such as your strengths and weaknesses, even though they should not be asking that. Um, Remembering the dates of your, I would say, job experiences, when you were hired, when you graduated, what languages you speak, which are you more fluent in, what is your highest college degree, what you specialized in, and why are you interested in this position, what sort of career path are you looking for, and so on and so forth. Unstructured interviews, on the other hand, they don't really have any sort of flow. They can just jump back and forth from, it can be they ask you about your education, and from there they just jump to your work experience. So usually in a I will discuss about situational interviews. It's also related to unstructured interviews at the same time. So I'll do this in the next slide. Structured ones are unstructured. We have the questions to ask. Okay, when it comes to unstructured interviews, we can also relate them to situational ones. Situational analysis or interview is you ask the candidate what his or her behavior would be in a given situation. And this can come out of nowhere. It's like, oh, I wasn't prepared for that. And I will explain these types of questions later on as well. So they can also ask them based on what situation, how did you behave? Based on a given hypothetical situation, how you would behave. So situational and behavior are almost the same in that sense, but behavior, it also talks about, I would say, how they react. You can ask them, I would say, in terms of stress-related interviews, such as you can push them to answer certain questions they might not be comfortable with. Take, for example, why did you pursue a master in marketing and not in finance? Why did you not, let's say it could be related to your experience. Why did you apply for our company? Why didn't you apply to our competition? And it can be a question that could be rude, such as, why did you, I would say not a rude question, but something that does push you to the edge. Uh, why did you choose to work in a country that does not give you a good salary? Something other to make you unnerved, just to see how you respond and are you very tolerant. So behavioral situations, or behavioral, sorry, so one is situational, the other one is behavioral. Behavioral is when they give you, they want to see your responses. Job-related questions are the simplest ones. They will ask you, what were your job-related tasks? What were your job-related duties? Who did you report to? And the last one are puzzle questions. Now, I have a puzzle question for all of you. And if you would kindly comment your answer without Googling the answer, you may win a prize. That is, I might buy you a pizza. Okay, this is only for my students in HRM. Okay, so my puzzle questions is, why is a tennis ball green and fuzzy? Let me repeat. Why is a tennis ball green and fuzzy? So let's have a little fun and see how you respond without Googling the answer. I'll give you 2 minutes to answer this. Treat this like an interview question. Puzzle questions usually are used by recruiters to see how you work under pressure, how you use critical thinking and analysis, okay, and how you come up with the best answer under this sort of situation. So let's look at the types of questions to ask in a situational one. Usually, interviewers who follow an unfocused path, they could ask questions such as, what do you want to be doing in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years in the company? It is one of the weakest questions to ask, and it shows that the interviewer is not good at interviewing, honestly, and they're just asking these questions because they think it's a good one. It leads nowhere, to be honest. Within 2 years, I could have been gone to another company. This is about my career path. If I was interviewing someone and I want to question if they want to grow with the company, I would ask them, what sort of career path do you see for yourself at our company? Or why did you choose to work with us? Why did you choose to be in this department? Why did you choose to follow this path? Or so on, something like this. So if you ask someone, what do you want to be, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Don't say dumb answers like, I want to be in your position. I want to take this seat. I'm going to overtake your job. Oh, that's very cocky. Questions like these generally do not provide much insight into how the person will do the job. That is why situational, behavioral, and job-related questions are the best. So in a situational interview, you can ask questions such, pertaining to a given situation or behavior. For example, you can ask a candidate how he or she would act in response to a subordinate coming in 3 days late to work in a row. What would you do? Fire them? But that's a leading question. Okay, when you say, would you fire them? That's a leading question. But say, how would you respond to that? Then wait to hear if they're going through a process. I would generally answer, like, if I see my junior coming in 3 days late, first of all, I will call them to my office. I'll sit them down and then ask them the reason why they're constantly late. And if their reason is even valid or not, I will issue them a warning letter. One warning letter should be enough to raise a white flag or red flag for them that they should not repeat this behavior. And that's it. Okay. So you have respected the company's rules and regulation. At the same time, you've shown empathy. So this is how I would respond. Okay. Situational questions start with phrases such as, suppose you were faced with a following situation, da da da, what would you do? In behavioral ones, applicants are asked to describe how they reacted to an actual situation that occurred to them in the past in a job environment. Okay, so there's a company called Vanguard. They use the STAR technique. STAR technique stands for situation, task, action, and of course results, or you can say response. So, behavioral questions usually start with, can you think of a time when da da da, and what did you do? And so, you can use both of these sort of questioning. So you can say in what sort of situation or what sort of task you had, what sort of action you took, and what was the result. But don't put it down this way. You have to be a little more, you have to be less callous and a little more structured. But you can ask in an unstructured way too. It doesn't matter. But that's one company's way of asking questions. Job-related questions are the simplest. Okay, applicants are just asked about their past experiences. The question here don't revolve around any sort of hypothetical, even actual situations or scenarios. Instead, the interviewer asks about questions such as, let's say, which courses did you like best in the business school, and how did it maybe lead to you selecting this job? Maybe or something such as, why did you start working at the bank, or why did you start your career in programming, so on and so forth. It's just sort of a mini assessment of the path you've taken to come to this company. Okay, usually the aim is to draw a conclusion about the candidate's ability to handle, let's say, the financial aspects of the jobs in question. I would honestly think about when I'm investing in a candidate, I want to know why they're here. Are they just trying to have fun? Is it a stepping stone to go into another company? Are they going to stick around for less than 2 years? So it's like a mini assessment. If they have too many different jobs and or have they hop jobs a lot, it would raise a red flag for me. Some people argue that job hopping is fine. Yeah, but if I'm going to invest time, money in training, inducting, and orienting the candidate into my company, I'm going to be a little careful who I hire. At the same time, you should know about the interviewer's mentality, that they're going to focus heavily on taking, maybe being result oriented, maybe being team player oriented. So be careful when you're posed these questions. They are sometimes leading you down a path of difficult questions too. It's usually in a stress that it could lead to a stress question. So in a stress interview, the interviewer seeks to make the applicant uncomfortable with occasionally rude or pressing questions. But be careful, they can't ask you personal questions such as, are you married? Or are you getting pregnant? How many children do you have? No personal questions are allowed. But I'll be honest, somewhere down the line, in some cultures, it is considered okay to ask those questions, but be very careful how you answer them. Don't look offended. Okay, and that could be the cultural thing is, for example, in the banking sector back home, if you were married and had children, you become a better candidate because they think you're more mature and you think about your life stability and income. Okay. Over here, they also ask me questions. Are you married? How many children do you have? And they get so happy when I tell them I have children and I'm married, I have a house, and I said, wow, it forms sort of a connection for the interview, but it's still wrong. The aim here is to, spot any sort of sensitivity in the applicant in certain areas. Sometimes some applicants are very sensitive and they can't work in a stressful environment. So it depends. Sometimes you need that sort of sensitivity too, in certain candidates to be, let's say, more empathetic towards other people in the environment. And I already talked about puzzle questions. Okay. For example, interview at Microsoft asked a tech service applicant this: Mike and Todd have $21 between them. Mike has $20 more than Todd does. How much money has Mike and how much money has Todd? Well, it's asked on the spot. So the answer, yeah, I'll be very curious if you could tell me the answer, um, because the answer is in the notes. I should have erased it, by the way, but it's fun. But here's another question for you guys, okay? Uh, how many adult yellow lab or Labrador dogs can you fit into an American school bus? Okay, I repeat, how many yellow labs can you fit into an American school bus, all adult size? Good luck. I want to know your answer, okay, and how you got to the answer. Moving ahead. Oh, sorry. Ah, my back. Ugh, my back's been hurting quite a lot. I should stretch more. Now we'll talk about the different types of interviews. The interview types are like one-on-one, which is very common. Sequential is when you have one-on-one or even panel interviews one after the other, depending on the timeline. Panel interviews in general is the same as panel having 3 or 4 people interview at the same time. Mass is that many candidates are brought in front of a panel or just one person for an interview. And then there's computer based. Usually a computer based is where it's like a selection process, but it could even record your interview and then post it forward. And web-based video interviews are live video interviews, but sometimes they can also be recorded. So let's look at some of them. All right, so there are different types, and the easiest one is the one-on-one interview. It's very common with a lot of people. It's usually just the two of you, the interviewer and the candidate, and most of the questions are, of course, oral. Usually, you should bring along your CV. Always bring along a copy of your CV, and I would always recommend bringing a hard copy of your references. Bring along a folder to take down notes, such as like paper and pen and everything. It should, you should be well prepared, not just as the candidate, but as the interviewer too. You should bring along certain notes, bring along the person's CV. It shows a lot of respect. But in terms, usually if they don't, I would highly recommend that you have a copy of them on your laptop when you interview this person or your computer, just in case. Uh, Prior to interviewing this person, I would highly recommend taking down notes from the selection process or any sort of reference checks you should have done. And a sequential is the same. It's almost the same thing, but you go through different levels of people. And you could go through the HR manager, you could go through the assistant manager, you could go through the hiring director, it doesn't matter. But there's always sometimes one person who takes the final decision, so they say, we'll call you back. It can even take sometimes some position can take up to 10 different interviews depending on the sensitivity of the position. One of my students, she had that issue. She had the 10th interview with Google, and on the 10th one, she kind of lost her nerve, and she didn't get hired because of that. And I'm pretty sure they were testing this. Will she break under pressure after so many interviews? One of my friends have gone to almost 11 interviews for his position in Deutsche Bank as a financial engineer. It's a highly sensitive position and very confidential one in terms of creating mathematical equations for running, I would say, derivative swaps and option and all those things. If you're interested in becoming a financial engineer, I'm pretty sure, or even a programmer, you know that position pays well and it's a sensitive position for the company. Moving ahead. Panel and mass interviews are almost the same. Almost in the sense that panel interviews is where, like I would say it's like a board review interview where there are 3 people on average sitting together. And why do they ask questions together? Because all 3 departments might be highly involved. I've done a panel interview before, even for a school when I was applying for art school. And there was a teacher, there was the admissions manager, and one was the dean of the school. And it was very interesting because they would shoot questions very quickly across me, and I did get into the school. It wasn't, but it was an interesting, method of asking questions because they wanted the best of the best. And I wasn't the best. I was good at art between having 650 candidates. There were 20 who were selected. But the thing is, they said something to me which was very interesting. I really didn't have the money to pursue art because art was expensive and it didn't really have a big industry at that moment in my country. Filmmaking and video and all that did, but what I wanted to pursue was actually animation. And I thought it was a good avenue to just go and do an interview. I applied for it. I went through the art exams. There were 6 stages, final interview. Um, when they called you for the interview, they said we selected 100 pool of candidates, out of which 20 will get the job, will get a position in the school, maybe even a scholarship. But the last guy who asked me, well, actually he made a statement. He's like, seems like you're not fully convinced to join the school. What could be the reason? I said, it's expensive and it's 5-year program and I don't know how to apply myself. And they said, if you ever change your mind, please let us know within a week because we have other candidates who are on the waiting list. And needless to say, I did go and tell them I don't want to be there. And I applied for information technology. And I think it was the best decision of my life. Maybe. I don't know. Now I'm having second thoughts. Oh boy. Anywho, then comes the telephone one. I personally prefer telephone ones because you don't really have to dress up. You can have your best personality on and not your best clothes. But it's also good for the interviewer because they get to assess you without any sort of filter. Because when you dress up, you change essentially who you are with makeup and dressing up, handshake, and all those things are eliminated. And when they are eliminated, all you're left is with your personality and your critical analysis and intelligence. So it's better when someone asks you a question on the phone, or when you ask someone a question on the phone, you can wait for, you can understand the response will be better. My advice to all of you, when you have an interview on a telephone, remember to smile. Always remember when they're going to call you, they give you time, lock yourself away. Okay, in a very private space in your room. Do not have any sort of interruptions, not from your children, not from your cat or dog, not from your friends or family. Tell them I have an interview. Lock yourself up. It's very important. Okay, so you can have the best concentration. Remember to breathe. When you pick up the phone, when you answer, remember to smile throughout and remember to breathe. Okay, don't let anything distract you. Also remember when the interviewer is asking questions, if you didn't understand anything, same goes for web-based computers, web-based interviews. Ask them to repeat the questions very gently. I'm sorry, I did not hear you. Could you repeat? Your line's breaking up. But when you close the interview, please do have a polite greeting. Don't say things like, okay, thank you very much, love you, bye-bye. Don't say love you, bye-bye. Be careful, understand who you're talking to. Don't get very casual. Uh, I think once on occasion, I accidentally, well, what do you call it? The interviewer said, okay, so, you got the job, so we'll be seeing you soon. And I replied to them, Inshallah. And yeah, that was so embarrassing. But what happened was when I was finished with the job and when the director was seeing me off, it's like, it was a very small contract here in Paris. And they said, it was great working with you. I hope to see you soon again, inshallah. And I'm like, oh, nice. He got me back with that. All right. It was a touche. Computer-based job interviews, on the other hand, are just a computerized selection interview in which a job candidate's oral and or keyed replies are obtained in response to a computerized oral, visual, or written question. It could be something like a computer reading out questions and you type in your responses. I really call this very impersonal, but it's still like an interview process because the questions could be mixed up a bit. So not every candidate gets the same question. On the other hand, web-based ones require somewhat of preparation, which I'll explain in the next slide. Okay, when you have to do an online or web-based interview, I'm talking to you in terms of an interviewee or a candidate. Please find a room where you can settle down, have the room clean up, look presentable, wear the best clothes, even that reflects. Don't just wear your jacket and at the bottom you're just wearing your underwear. No, fully well dressed, okay? Make sure that your microphone is working. Make sure your camera is working properly. I highly, highly recommend testing your audio, video, everything, camera, streaming with a friend. Make sure you're in a bright room. And when I say bright, that you should light up, not the background. If the camera picks up the lighting from the back, you will look really dark and ominous, okay? Like a scary movie. And when you do a test and you do a dry run with a friend in terms of interviewing, you have to understand video interviews have a lot of problem in terms of internet connection. The internet connection might be slow. There might even be lagging in your computer software or hardware. So sometimes your audio might, slow down. Sometimes your video might start to lag. So whatever happens, remember one thing: relax, breathe, and do your interview normally. Make sure to speak a little louder, sit up straight, and if possible, have your computer or laptop a little higher in front of you so the microphone can pick up your voice. I also recommend speaking a little, I would say, with articulation and with a little more pressure on your voice so you're well heard and you sound confident. Okay, and wait for the interview to end their statement. If they have a question, they end it and you did not hear it. politely say, I'm sorry, I did not understand your question. Could you please repeat yourself? Let them repeat and say, okay, I understood your question. Here's my answer. Because once again, it's not live. I mean, it's not one-to-one. And once they're done, please thank them and let them end the video conference. You may remain seated like an idiot, smile at them, and say, thank you so much for your time. They might say things like, do you have any questions for us? You can say, yes, I do. I have one or two questions if you don't mind me asking. And once again, ask those two questions and say, no, that's it. Thank you very much. I have no further questions. And they say, we might call you, say thank you. And that's it. Let them terminate the call. When they terminate, you're free to go. You can go wear your pajamas and dance around. Okay. That's it for this one. I just wanted to talk a little bit of Urban Outfitters. It's going to be there in the slides. Urban Outfitters, what they tried to do was eliminate their cost and time of recruiting. They used to do what we say panel mass interviews, and it wasn't really working out for them because the people they try to hire should be a reflection of the type of community they are attracting, you know, and of course, it's all about pride, creativity, and respect in their community. In order to eliminate cost as well as I would say time, they use web interviews using the software, what was it called? The Higher View, I think that's what it was called. Yeah, Higher View, like Higher View in French. Higher View system, which the interviewers were given first a computerized interview, so they had to answer a few questions. They would record themselves interviewing them, make up like a pitch video and send it forward to the I would say the hiring manager. The hiring manager can watch the video anytime they wanted, let's say outside of office hours. And when they did, they would, you know, if they liked it, they would say, yeah, I want this person to come forward for the next round of interviews. In a way, it's a bit like American Idols. Okay, you send in your video, and if they like it, they say, come on in. But it really kind of helped them to reduce their time and cost by almost 80% for recruitment, and they can move forward very quickly with it. Anyway, so I'm going to terminate the video. So I was just saying I'm going to terminate the video right here. Don't forget there is a part two. The link is probably also in the YouTube video and in the description, as well as in on your Become. Okay, so continue watching the other parts, and I hope to see you guys soon. Take care. Bye bye.